The invitation arrived 4 months before the wedding. Heavy cream cardstock, my sister Victoria's name embossed in rose gold, every detail screaming expensive taste and careful planning. Inside, a small note in her handwriting. I know you'll probably come alone, but you're still my sister. Please try to dress appropriately for once. I'd stared at that note for a long time before tucking it back into the envelope. Now, standing in the grand ballroom of the Riverside estate, I watched Victoria hold court in her $15,000 Vera Wang gown. She looked beautiful, she always did. Tall, blonde, poised, everything our parents had always wanted in a daughter. And beside her, looking equally perfect in his custom tuxedo, was her new husband, Marcus Wellington, rising star at Sterling and Hayes Investment Bank. I stood near the back of the cocktail hour, holding a glass of champagne I hadn't touched, wearing a simple black dress I'd bought off the rack at Nordstrom. Around me, 300 guests mingled. Victoria's sorority sisters, Marcus's colleagues from the bank, my parents' country club friends, extended family members I saw once a year at Christmas. Everyone was dressed to impress. Everyone belonged here except me. Natalie. My mother materialized beside me, her smile tight. She was wearing a champagne-colored gown that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Or at least more than she thought my monthly rent was. You made it. I was worried you'd cancel at the last minute. You look nice. Nice, in my mother's vocabulary, meant disappointingly plain, but I suppose it could be worse. Thanks, Mom. Did you come alone? She scanned the area around me as if a date might suddenly materialize from thin air. I did. She sighed. Well, I suppose that's for the best. No need to subject some poor man to all this family scrutiny. Though Natalie, at 33 you really should be making more of an effort. Victoria found Marcus. Surely you could find someone. Victoria found a banker, I said mildly. I'm happy for her. A vice president at Sterling and Hayes. My mother corrected as if I might have forgotten the job title she'd mentioned approximately 40 times. One of the most prestigious investment banks in the country. Marcus has a very promising career ahead of him. Victoria will never have to worry about money. Unlike me, was the clear implication. That's wonderful, I said. You could have had that too, you know, she continued, her voice dropping to that particular tone of disappointed concern she'd perfected over the years. If you'd stayed in corporate, if you'd kept the McKinsey job. But you threw it all away to do, what is it you do again? Consulting. Something like that. Something like that, she repeated, her lips pursing. Natalie, you had such potential. Top of your class at Wharton, recruited by McKinsey, a clear path to success. And you just walked away from it all to work from home doing mysterious consulting projects. Do you know how I explain that to people? I can imagine. I tell them you're finding yourself, she said, as if this were tremendously generous. That you needed a break from the corporate world. But honestly, darling, it's been 7 years. When are you going to stop finding yourself and start building an actual career? Before I could respond, my father's voice boomed across the room. Natalie. There you are, hiding in the corner as usual. He approached with his usual commanding presence. Tall, silver-haired, still imposing at 62. Behind him was Marcus and an older man I recognized from the society pages. William Sterling, CEO and founder of Sterling and Hayes. Mr. Sterling, my father said with the oily charm he reserved for people he wanted to impress. I'd like you to meet my younger daughter, Natalie. She's the one I mentioned. Very bright, went to Wharton, but decided corporate life wasn't for her. The way he said it made wasn't for her sound like, couldn't handle it. Natalie, Mr. Sterling said, extending his hand. His grip was firm, his gaze assessing. Pleasure to meet you. Your father tells me you do consulting work. Yes, I said simply. What kind of consulting? Business strategy primarily. Mergers and acquisitions, corporate restructuring, that sort of thing. Freelance? He asked, and I could see him categorizing me. Young woman working from home, probably struggling to make ends meet. You could say that. My father laughed, that booming laugh that was meant to show everyone he was in on the joke. Natalie's always been private about her work. We barely know what she does all day. Could be anything from corporate consulting to selling crafts on Etsy, right, sweetheart? Several people nearby chuckled. I felt my face heat up but kept my expression neutral. Well, Mr. Sterling said politely, consulting can be a viable path. Though in my experience the freelance route is challenging. Steady clients can be hard to come by. I manage, I said. I'm sure you do, my father said, patting my shoulder in a way that felt more dismissive than affectionate. Natalie's always been resourceful. Haven't you, dear? Making do with what you have. Marcus jumped in, trying to be kind. There's nothing wrong with working from home, Dad. Lots of people have flexible arrangements these days. Of course, my father agreed quickly. I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying there's a difference between what you do, vice president at Sterling and Hayes, clear trajectory to partner, and what Natalie does. Both valid, just different levels of ambition. Different levels of success, my mother added, unable to help herself. I took a sip of my champagne and said nothing. Mr. Sterling looked slightly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. Well, I should find my wife. Congratulations again, Marcus. You're a lucky man. After he left, my father turned to me. You could have made more of an effort, Natalie. First impression matters. Mr. Sterling is one of the most influential men in finance. I'm aware. Then act like it. This is Victoria's wedding. The least you could do is try not to embarrass the family. He walked away before I could respond, leaving me standing there with my mother, who sighed dramatically. He's just worried about you, dear. We both are. You're 33, single, working some vague consulting job from your apartment. Victoria is settling down with a successful man, building a real life. Don't you want that? What I want, I said carefully, is for people to stop assuming they know what my life looks like. Well, if you'd share more, we wouldn't have to assume, she countered. You're so secretive about everything. Where you work, what you do, how much you make. It's like you're ashamed. I'm not ashamed. Then what are you? She asked, genuinely confused. Private, I said. There's a difference. She shook her head, clearly not understanding. Well, try to enjoy the wedding anyway. And Natalie? Smile during the toasts. Your father is planning to say some nice things about Victoria. Try to look happy for your sister. The dinner reception was everything Victoria had planned, elegant, expensive, and absolutely perfect. I sat at table 14, far from the head table where my family sat with Marcus's family and the most important guests. My table mates were distant cousins and family friends' children, most of whom I barely knew. So you're Victoria's sister, the woman next to me said, making conversation. What do you do? Consulting, I said, and watched her eyes glaze over. Oh, that's nice. I'm in marketing. We made polite small talk through the first course, but I could feel the weight of the reception pressing down on me. Every so often I'd catch my father glancing over, his expression a mixture of disappointment and resigned acceptance. This was my role in the family narrative, the disappointing younger daughter who'd had such promise but failed to live up to it. The food was excellent, filet mignon and Chilean sea bass, prepared by a chef Victoria had flown in from San Francisco. The wine was expensive, the flowers were perfect, the string quartet was playing classical arrangements of modern songs. Everything was exactly as it should be for a Wellington Sterling wedding. After dinner the toasts began. Marcus's best man went first, telling stories about their college days and early career. Then Victoria's maid of honor, sharing memories of sorority life and girls' trips to Europe. Everyone laughed at the appropriate moments, raised their glasses on cue, performed their roles perfectly. Then it was my father's turn. He stood up, commanding attention the way he always did. The room quieted immediately. I want to talk about my daughters, he began, and I felt every muscle in my body tense. I have 2 daughters and they couldn't be more different. Here it comes, I thought. Victoria, he continued, smiling at her warmly, has always been everything a father could hope for. Beautiful, accomplished, driven. She graduated magna cum laude from Stanford. She's built a successful career in marketing. And now she's married a wonderful man with an equally impressive career. The crowd murmured appreciatively. Victoria was glowing. And then there's Natalie, my father said, and the warmth drained from his voice. My younger daughter, who had so much potential. Top of her class at Wharton, we were so proud. Recruited by McKinsey, we thought she'd made it. But then she decided corporate life wasn't for her. She quit after 2 years and has been doing freelance consulting ever since. People were shifting uncomfortably in their seats now. This wasn't the usual wedding toast formula. I love both my daughters, he said, though his tone suggested a very different emotion. But I won't lie and pretend they're equally successful. Victoria has built a life. Natalie is still finding herself, I suppose. Dad, Victoria said quietly, but he was already raising his glass. To my successful daughter and her disappointment of a sister, he said, his voice carrying across the ballroom. May one continue to thrive, and may the other eventually figure out what she wants to be when she grows up. The entire reception laughed. Not everyone. Some people looked uncomfortable. But enough people laughed that the sound echoed through the room, bouncing off the high ceilings and crystal chandeliers. I kept my head down, staring at my plate. My face was burning. My hands were shaking slightly. I wanted to disappear, to sink through the floor, to be anywhere but here. This was it. This was the moment I'd been dreading. My father, in front of 300 people, reducing me to nothing more than a punchline. The disappointing daughter. The family embarrassment. The room was starting to settle down, people taking sips of their champagne, the string quartet preparing to play again, when a chair scraped loudly against the floor. Then the groom's boss, CEO of the investment bank, stood up. William Sterling rose from his seat at the head table, and the room went silent again. He wasn't smiling. I apologize for interrupting, he said, his voice cold in a way that made it clear he wasn't apologizing at all. But I feel compelled to say something. My father looked confused, then pleased, probably assuming Mr. Sterling was going to add his own congratulations to Victoria and Marcus. Actually, I'd like to toast someone else here tonight, Mr. Sterling said, his eyes scanning the room until they found me at table 14. I felt my stomach drop. He raised his glass toward me. Every head in the room turned. 300 pairs of eyes landing on me at table 14. To my business partner who owns 60% of our firm and made us all millionaires. The silence that followed was absolute. My father's face drained of color. What? He said, the word barely audible. Mr. Sterling continued, his voice carrying clearly through the stunned silence. I realize most of you don't know Natalie Hamilton beyond what her family has told you. Which is unfortunate because you're missing out on meeting one of the most brilliant strategic minds in finance. He walked over to my table and I had no choice but to stand up. My legs felt unsteady but I managed it. Natalie and I met 7 years ago, Mr. Sterling said, addressing the room. She was at McKinsey working on a project for one of our competitors. She presented a restructuring strategy that was so innovative, so elegant, that I immediately tried to poach her for Sterling and Hayes. He smiled at me. She turned me down. Said she wasn't interested in working for someone else. She wanted to build something of her own. My father was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. So we struck a different deal, Mr. Sterling continued. Natalie agreed to provide strategic consulting to Sterling and Hayes, helping us identify acquisition targets, restructure our operations, develop new business lines. In exchange, I gave her equity in the firm. He paused, letting that sink in. Initially, it was 10%. A generous offer, I thought, for a consultant. But Natalie's work was so valuable, so instrumental to our growth, that over the following years, I offered her more equity. When she helped us acquire Rothman Partners, I gave her another 15%. When her strategy for our Asian expansion generated $200 million in revenue, I gave her another 20%. And last year, when she single-handedly saved us from a catastrophic merger that would have destroyed the firm, I gave her the remaining 15%. He raised his glass higher. Because not only does she own our company. Marcus was staring at me, his face pale. She's the reason my brother-in-law has a job. The words hung in the air like smoke. Marcus, Mr. Sterling said, turning to address my new brother-in-law directly, you were hired 3 years ago as an associate. Do you remember your interview? Marcus nodded mutely. Do you remember that I personally interviewed you for an associate position? Which was unusual since CEOs don't typically interview at that level. I thought it was because my credentials were strong, Marcus said weakly. Your credentials were adequate, Mr. Sterling said bluntly. You were hired because Natalie recommended you. She'd done a background check on Victoria's boyfriend. He glanced at my sister, and determined that Marcus had potential. She suggested we hire him, mentor him, give him opportunities to grow. Every promotion he's received, every major account he's been assigned, every bonus he's earned, all approved by Natalie. The room was so silent I could hear my own heartbeat. In fact, Mr. Sterling continued. Natalie specifically requested that Marcus be assigned to the Morrison account last year. The successful completion of that deal is what earned him his promotion to vice president. He turned back to me. Which means, Marcus, that your entire career at Sterling and Hayes exists because your wife's disappointing sister made it happen. Victoria had her hand over her mouth. Marcus looked like he might be sick. My father had gone from pale to gray. So when I hear someone call Natalie Hamilton a disappointment, Mr. Sterling said, his voice hardening, when I hear someone mock her career choices, when I hear someone suggest she's been finding herself for 7 years, I feel obliged to set the record straight. He pulled out his phone and pulled up something on the screen. These are the most recent financials for Sterling and Hayes. Our firm is currently valued at $3.8 billion. Natalie's 60% stake is worth approximately $2.3 billion. And that's just her equity in the firm. It doesn't include her other investments, her real estate portfolio, or her stake in the 6 other companies she's helped build over the past 7 years. He showed the screen to my father, who was now gripping the table for support. For context, Mr. Sterling said dryly, that's approximately 400 times what you're worth, Mr. Hamilton. Give or take. The room erupted in whispers. People pulling out phones, frantically Googling. My mother had her hand pressed to her chest like she might faint. But the best part, Mr. Sterling continued, and now there was something almost cruel in his smile, is that Natalie specifically asked me not to tell her family. She wanted to keep her involvement with the firm private. She said, and I quote, I don't want my success to change how my family sees me. I just want them to see me. He looked at my father. She gave you that opportunity, Mr. Hamilton. 7 years to see your daughter for who she actually is. And instead, you chose to see her as a disappointment. My father opened his mouth, but no words came out. Victoria stood up, tears streaming down her face. Nat, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Of course you didn't, Mr. Sterling said before I could respond. Because Natalie is discreet. Professional. She keeps her business life separate from her personal life. Which, in my experience, is the mark of someone who's truly secure in their success. He turned to me. I apologize for putting you on the spot like this, Natalie. I know you didn't want your family to know. But I've kept quiet for 7 years while watching them treat you like you're less than. Tonight, hearing your own father call you a disappointment in front of 300 people, I decided enough was enough. It's okay, I said quietly. It was the first time I'd spoken since the toast began, and my voice sounded strange to my own ears. No, he said firmly. It's not okay. Your family should have believed in you without needing proof of your net worth. They should have trusted that you knew what you were doing with your career. They should have respected your privacy instead of making assumptions. He raised his glass again, addressing the room. To Natalie Hamilton. The woman who turned down every traditional path to success and built something better on her own terms. The woman who owns 60% of one of the most successful investment banks in the country and never felt the need to brag about it. The woman who helped launch her brother-in-law's career and asked for nothing in return. The woman who, despite being called an embarrassment by her own father, has more class and dignity than anyone else in this room. To Natalie, he said firmly. To Natalie, Marcus echoed, standing up. His voice was shaking. I had no idea. God, Nat, I had no idea. One by one, people started standing. First, the other Sterling and Hayes employees who were at the wedding. Then Victoria's friends who'd heard enough to realize they'd misjudged me. Then distant relatives and family friends, people who didn't know me well but recognized a dramatic power shift when they saw one. Soon the entire room was standing, glasses raised, all directed at me at table 14. All except my parents, who remained seated looking shell-shocked. I think, Mr. Sterling said into the silence, that I should provide some additional context. For those of you who don't work in finance, let me explain what a 60% stake in Sterling and Hayes actually means. He clicked to another slide on his phone and projected it on the screen at the front of the room, the same screen that had been showing photos of Victoria and Marcus just minutes ago. This is our growth trajectory over the past 7 years, he said. The graph showed a steady, dramatic upward climb. We've grown from a mid-sized regional bank to one of the top 15 investment banks in the country. That growth is directly attributable to strategies Natalie developed. Another slide. This is our client list. We represent 72 Fortune 500 companies. Natalie personally brought in 43 of them. Another slide. This is our employee roster. We've grown from 180 employees 7 years ago to 842 today. Every department head, every hiring strategy, every organizational restructure. Natalie designed all of it. He looked at my father. Your daughter didn't just stumble into success, Mr. Hamilton. She didn't get lucky with an inheritance or marry into wealth or win the lottery. She built this. From scratch. With nothing but her mind and her work ethic and her refusal to settle for anything less than excellence. My mother found her voice. But why didn't you tell us? Natalie, why would you hide this? I finally spoke, my voice steady now. Because I wanted you to respect me for who I am, not what I'm worth. I wanted you to be proud of me because of my character, my values, my choices. Not because of my bank balance. We are proud of you, my father said, but his voice was weak. Are you? I challenged. Because 5 minutes ago you called me an embarrassment in front of 300 people. You toasted your successful daughter and your disappointment of a sister. You've spent 7 years treating me like I was wasting my life because I didn't follow the path you wanted me to follow. I didn't know. You didn't want to know, I corrected. Every time I tried to talk about my work, you changed the subject. Every time I mentioned a project, you made a joke about my freelance consulting. You decided I was a failure and you never questioned that assumption. Victoria walked over to my table, her wedding dress rustling. Nat, I'm so sorry. I've been awful to you. I bragged about Marcus's job, about our lifestyle, about everything, and the whole time, you were the one who made it all possible. You didn't know, I said, more gently with her than I'd been with our father. But I should have defended you, she said, crying openly now. When Dad started that toast, I should have stopped him. I should have told him that success looks different for everyone. I should have stood up for my sister. Why didn't you? I asked, not accusingly but genuinely curious. Because I believed him, she admitted. I believed you were struggling. I believed you'd made bad choices. I believed I was the successful one and you were the disappointment. And I'm so sorry. Mr. Sterling cleared his throat. I have one more thing to add. Mr. Hamilton, you mentioned earlier that I'm one of the most influential men in finance. That's true. But do you know why I have that influence? My father shook his head. Because Natalie Hamilton is my business partner. Because having her name associated with mine, having her strategic mind behind my firm, having her as a stakeholder, that's what gives Sterling and Hayes its reputation. People don't want to work with me. They want to work with us. And mostly they want to work with her. He smiled at me. Natalie is the smartest person I've ever met. He sees patterns no one else sees. She solves problems no one else can solve. She's turned down offers from Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and Blackstone because she's not interested in working for someone else's vision. She wants to build her own. And she has, he concluded. She's built something extraordinary. Not despite rejecting the traditional path but because of it. She saw that path for what it was, limited, confining, someone else's definition of success, and she chose something better. The room was silent again. Processing. Recalculating. Seeing me maybe for the first time. Marcus approached slowly like he was afraid I might bolt. Nat, I don't know what to say. My entire career, everything I thought I'd earned. You did earn it, I interrupted. Marcus, I recommended you for the interview but you got yourself hired. You impressed your managers. You closed your deals. You earned your promotions through your own work. I just opened the door. You walked through it. But why? He asked. Why help me? Because Victoria loved you, I said simply. And I wanted her to be happy. You're a good guy, Marcus. You deserved a chance. I just made sure you got one. He looked at Victoria then back at me. I'll never be able to repay you. I don't want repayment, I said. I wanted my sister to marry someone good, someone who'd treat her well. You're that person. That's enough. My father finally stood up but he looked unsteady. Natalie, I need to apologize. Yes, I agreed. You do. I was wrong about you. About everything. I thought. He trailed off, seeming to realize that any explanation would sound like an excuse. You thought what? I prompted. That success only looks one way. That the only valid career path is the traditional corporate ladder? that anyone who chooses differently is somehow less than. I thought I was protecting you, he said, and he sounded almost defensive now. You had such a great opportunity at McKinsey. I thought you were throwing it away. You thought you knew better than I did about my own life, I corrected. You decided what success should look like for me, and when I chose something different you saw it as failure. You never asked why I left McKinsey. You never asked what I was building. You just assumed I'd made a mistake, and you spent 7 years reminding me of it. My mother came over, dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. We just wanted what was best for you. No, I said firmly. You wanted what looked best. There's a difference. You wanted me to have a prestigious job title you could brag about at the country club. You wanted me to marry someone impressive so you could show off at family gatherings. You wanted me to fit into your definition of success so you'd feel validated as parents. That's not fair, she protested. Isn't it? I looked at her directly. Mom, when's the last time you asked me if I was happy? Not successful, not making money, not building a career, just happy. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Never, I said. You've never asked me that. Because my happiness was never the point. The point was whether I made you look good. The wedding reception had completely derailed now. People were talking in hushed clusters, stealing glances at me, at my family, at Mr. Sterling. The string quartet had given up pretending to play. Even the waitstaff had stopped moving. Victoria took my hand. What do we do now? How do we fix this? I don't know if you can fix it, I said honestly. 7 years of being treated like I was less than, that's not something that goes away with an apology. But I want to try, she said desperately. You're my sister. I love you. I don't care about the money or the job or any of it. I just want my sister back. I looked at her, really looked at her. She'd been crying so much that her perfect makeup was ruined. Her carefully styled hair was coming loose. She looked nothing like the poised bride from an hour ago. She looked real. And genuinely sorry. Hey, I said. We can try. But Victoria, things have to change. Really change. Not just we're sorry, and then back to the same dynamic. Anything, she said. Tell me what you need. I need you to see me, I said. Not as your little sister who needs guidance. Not as the disappointment of the family. Not as someone who needs to be fixed or saved. It's me. The actual person I am. I can do that, she said. I want to do that. Mr. Sterling checked his watch. I should probably let you get back to your wedding reception. Though I suspect it's going to be a bit different from what you planned. Victoria laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. You could say that. He turned to me. Natalie, I apologize again for ambushing you. But I want you to know, I'm proud to have you as a partner. Not because of the money you've made me, though that's substantial. But because of who you are. Your integrity. Your intelligence. Your kindness. He glanced at Marcus. You helped launch your brother-in-law's career and asked for nothing in return. That's the kind of person you are. That's the kind of partner I'm lucky to work with. After he returned to his seat, my father approached me again. Can we talk? Privately. Not tonight, I said. Tonight is Victoria's wedding. Let's let her have that. But, Dad, I said, and my voice was firm now, you spent 7 years not listening to me. You can wait a few more days to have this conversation. He looked like he wanted to argue, but something in my expression stopped him. He nodded and walked back to his table, suddenly looking much older than his 62 years. The reception eventually resumed, though the atmosphere was completely different. The DJ started playing, people began dancing, but everything felt surreal. I could feel eyes on me constantly. People I'd ignored earlier in the evening suddenly wanted to talk to me. Family members who'd barely acknowledged me were finding excuses to stop by my table. I left after an hour. I found Victoria in the bridal suite, taking a break from the reception. You're leaving, she said. It wasn't a question. I think it's best. I don't want you to go, she said. This is my wedding day, and I just found out my little sister is a secret billionaire who's been supporting my husband's career without asking for anything in return. I feel like we should talk about that. We will, I promised. But not tonight. Tonight is about you and Marcus. Go back to your reception. Dance with your husband. Celebrate your marriage. We'll have coffee next week and really talk. She hugged me tightly. Thank you. For everything. For Marcus's job, for not telling people about the money, For coming tonight even though you knew it would be awful. You're a better sister than I deserve. You're a better sister than you've been acting like, I corrected gently. There's a difference. You're capable of being good. You just need to choose it. As I walked out to my car, a simple Honda Civic that had shocked the valets, I felt lighter than I had in years. The secret was out. The dynamic had shifted. Things would be different now. Whether they'd be better remained to be seen. But at least they'd be honest. And that was a start. 3 days later, I met Victoria for coffee at a small cafe far from our usual family haunts. Marcus has been a mess, she said immediately. He keeps trying to draft resignation letters. He says he can't work for a company his wife's sister owns. That it's a conflict of interest. Tell him not to resign, I said. He's good at his job. He earned his position. The fact that I own part of the company doesn't change that. But he feels like he didn't earn it, I finished. I know. But he did. Victoria, I've been watching his work for 3 years. I've seen his client presentations, his deal structures, his analysis. He's talented. He would have succeeded somewhere else if not at Sterling and Hayes. I just made sure he succeeded with us. She stirred her coffee, not meeting my eyes. Dad wants to see you. I know. He's called me 17 times. Are you going to talk to him? Eventually. When I'm ready. He feels terrible. Good, I said bluntly. He should feel terrible. He called me an embarrassment at your wedding in front of 300 people. He spent 7 years dismissing everything I do and treating me like a failure. A few days of feeling bad doesn't undo that. I feel terrible too, Victoria said softly. I was so focused on my life, my career, my success. I never stopped to think about yours. I just accepted Mom and Dad's version of who you were. Why? She finally looked up at me. Because it was easier. If you were the disappointment, then I was the success. If you were lost, then I was found. Your failure made my success mean more. That's honest, I said. I'm trying to be honest now, she said. I'm trying to understand why I treated you the way I did. And Nat, the truth is that I was jealous. Jealous. I repeated, genuinely surprised. You've always been smarter than me, she said. Everyone knew it. At school, at college, in your career. You were top of your class at Wharton while I was middle of the pack at Stanford. You got recruited by McKinsey while I struggled to get interviews with mid-tier marketing firms. You've always been the brilliant one. So you decided I was a failure? I decided to believe Mom and Dad when they said you'd made a mistake leaving McKinsey. It was comforting. It meant that being smart wasn't everything. That my steadier, more traditional path was actually better. She wiped her eyes. But you weren't a failure. You were building something incredible, and I was so invested in my own narrative that I never even looked. I'm so sorry, Nat. For all of it. I reached across the table and took her hand. I forgive you. But Victoria, you need to figure out who you are separate from comparing yourself to me. You need to find value in your own accomplishments that has nothing to do with whether they're better or worse than mine. I don't know how to do that. Start by defining success for yourself, I said. What makes you happy? What are you proud of? What do you want your life to look like? Answer those questions without thinking about me or Mom and Dad or what anyone else expects. That sounds hard. It is, I agreed. But it's worth it. Because once you do, you'll stop needing me to be less so you can be more. We talked for 2 hours. Really talked, maybe for the first time in years. She asked about my work and I actually told her. I explained the strategies I developed, the companies I advised, the deals I structured. She listened, really listened, without comparing it to her own career or trying to one-up me. It was nice. Different. The beginning of something better. When I finally met with my father a week later, the conversation was harder. I've been thinking about that toast, he said. We were in his study, the room where he'd held so many lectures over the years about responsibility and success and living up to the Hamilton name. Trying to understand why I said those things. And I think I was angry, he admitted. You had so much potential and you threw away McKinsey and I couldn't understand why. It felt personal. Like you were rejecting the path I'd laid out for you. I said. I know that now. But at the time it felt like you were rejecting me. Rejecting my advice, my experience, my guidance. So I decided you'd made a mistake. And I kept looking for evidence that you'd made a mistake. Every time I saw your old car or your modest apartment, it confirmed what I wanted to believe. That I was a failure. That you needed me, he corrected. If you were failing, then you'd come back. You'd ask for my help. You'd admit I was right. But you never did. Because I didn't need you to be right, I said. I needed you to trust me. He was quiet for a long moment. I don't know if I can fix this, Natalie. I don't know how to undo 7 years of. You can't, I interrupted. You can't undo it. But you can do better going forward. You can choose to trust me from now on. You can choose to respect my choices even when you don't understand them. You can choose to see me as someone who knows what she's doing with her own life. I want that, he said. I want to have a relationship with my daughter again. Then you're going to have to accept that I'm not the daughter you imagined, I said. I'm not going to work for a big corporation. I'm not going to follow the traditional path. I'm not going to need your approval or validation. I've built my life on my own terms and I'm going to keep doing that. Even though you don't need to, he asked. Even though you have billions. You could retire tomorrow. Live on a beach somewhere. Never work again. I work because I love it, I said. Not because I need the money. I solve problems. I build things. I help companies reach their potential. That's what makes me happy. And Dad, you're going to have to accept that my definition of success is different from yours. He nodded slowly. I can try. That's all I can promise. I can try to be better. That's all I'm asking. It's been 6 months since Victoria's wedding. The story of what happened has become somewhat legendary in finance circles. The secret billionaire sister, the humiliating toast, the dramatic revelation. Mr. Sterling has had to field dozens of interview requests, all of which I've declined. My relationship with Victoria is better than it's been in years. We have coffee every week and she's stopped comparing herself to me. She's started therapy, working through some of the competitive dynamics our parents created. Marcus and I have an easy working relationship. He's stopped trying to resign and has actually started coming to me for advice on complex deals. My father and I are still rebuilding. It's slow. There are still moments where he slips into old patterns, offering unsolicited advice or making assumptions about my life. But he catches himself now. He apologizes. He tries. My mother is the hardest. She still doesn't quite understand why I lived the way I did. She still thinks I should have told them sooner, that I wasted years letting them worry. But she's trying in her way to accept that my choices were mine to make. The biggest change is that I don't hide anymore. I don't downplay my success or let people make assumptions. When someone asks what I do, I tell them. I own my achievements. I take pride in what I've built. Because I learned something important that night at Victoria's wedding. Respect that's conditional on your bank balance isn't real respect. Real respect comes from being seen for who you are, not what you're worth. And now, finally, my family is starting to see me. Not the disappointment. Not the embarrassment. Not the version of me they'd created to make themselves feel better. Just me. The actual person I've always been. And that, more than any amount of money, is worth celebrating.